Welcome back to the channel, DRSN here. In today's basketball lecture, we will be talking about the NBA's biggest what ifs of the 2000s, and we'll be talking about Brandon Roy. Brandon Roy's career is most fascinating because of how quickly he went from a promising rookie to one of the best shooting guards in the NBA. He made three consecutive All-Star teams, earned All NBA honors, looked like he was on his way to become like one of the faces of the leagues. Unfortunately, knee injuries completely changed the trajectory of his career. So we're going to look at what Brandon Roy accomplished before the injuries and what happened afterward. Ultimately, asking the question in the conclusion that what could Brandon Roy have become if his knees hadn't held up. And let's look into the outline. So we'll rate Brandon Roy's career into several stages. First, we'll look at his background and physical profile. Then we'll examine his playing style, what made him such a difficult player to defend. After all, after that, we'll go season by season from the 06-07 to the 010-11, covering his statistics, accomplishments, and team success. We'll look closely at his playoff performances, including his incredible 2009 series against the Houston Rockets. Finally, we'll look at his attempted comeback he made in the 012-013 season and what his career might have looked like if injuries didn't take away his prime. So let's start with his background. He was selected 6th overall in the 2006 NBA draft. Minnesota Timberwolves originally selected him, but then he was traded to the Portland Trailblazers. I believe they drafted Aldridge too in the same draft, so the Portland did good in terms of drafting. And he's still 6'6", 207 pounds, 6'8" wingspan. Before entering the NBA, Roy was already accomplished college player. He had collegiate level accolades. He's from the University of Washington. He was named Pac-10 Player of the Year consensus, first team All-American, a first team All Pac-10 selection. His jersey's retired, number 3. He wore in college. So there was a lot of anticipation because of his college accolades of surrounding him when he entered the NBA. In terms of his play style, let's talk about what made him such a special player. The first thing that stands out is his mid-range game. He was extremely comfortable pulling up from the mid-range and creating his own shot. He could also post up on smaller guards and use his size and footwork to create scoring opportunities. Another major part of his game was the ability to finish through contact. Roy wasn't afraid to attack the basket or absorb physical contact. He was also a capable perimeter defender, which prevented defenders from simply sagging off from him, so you couldn't leave him open. But perhaps the biggest characteristic was his mentality. He was a fearless scorer. When Portland needed a basket late in the game, he wasn't afraid to take the responsibility of taking the whole offense. He was a clutch player. He was a clutch performer. This combination of shot creation, strength, footwork, and late game confidence made him one of the most dangerous young guards in the league in the late 2000s. So we're talking Kobe, Dwayne Wade, Ray Allen. But he was getting up there too as a dominant shooting guard, a scoring shooting guard. So let's start off. What is it? The 06-07, his rookie year. He immediately showed in his rookie year why Portland had such high expectations for him. So he averaged 16 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds, 1 steal, 0.2 blocks per game while shooting 45.6% and 37% from the 3 and 83% from the free throw line. He was named Rookie of the Year and he made a first team All-Rookie. However, Portland struggled as a team, finishing 32 and 50. They had a veteran Zach Randolph who would leave the following year, I believe, to join New York. But they had he was paired up with a young Marcus Aldridge. So they're a rebuilding team following the rebuild after the Trailblazers collapsed in the early 2000s. But even as a rookie, Roy looked like someone who's eventually going to become the franchise's centerpiece. let's talk about his sophomore year, second season. He took another step forward. He increased his scoring to 19.1 points per game while averaging more assists and 5.8 and 4.7 rebounds. He shot 45.4% from the field, 34% from the three. Most importantly, Roy made a first All-Star appearance. In his second season, he made an All-Star appearance, which was good. He was also incredibly important to Portland's offense. He led the team in points, assists, steals, and minutes. Unfortunately, Portland wasn't ready to make the playoffs. They finished 41-41, so they were in the loaded Western Conference, and they didn't have a losing record, but they didn't have a winning record, so they were They were an okay team, but they couldn't make the playoffs. There was no playing tournament during that time. But this season established Roy as as just a promising young player. He was becoming an actual All-Star and the unquestioned leader of the Trailblazers. Now, let's go to the 09's third year, the 08-09 season. This is what I'll consider his peak of his career. During this season, he averaged 22.6 points per game. He 5.1 assists, 4.7 rebounds per game. He shot 48% from the field, 37% from three, 82% from the free throw line. He made All-Star team, but he also got selected All NBA second team. So I believe he beat Dwayne Wade for All Team. Wait, that might not be true, but you can correct me in the comments. But believe he beat Dwayne Wade in All NBA second team selection. I think Kobe made a first team for shooting guards. Most importantly, Portland finally became a legitimate playoff team. So they finished 54-28. They were fourth seed, and he was also 88 overall. I didn't mention the two. I also mentioned in these slides the 2K overall. But he led the team in points, assists, steals, and minutes again for the second year in a row. So this was at only 24 years old. He was doing this. He already looked like a superstar who was entering his prime. And I want to note this was the first year Greg Oden played, so they didn't draft Kevin Durant in the 2007 draft. The Portland Trailblazers, they drafted Greg Oden, which is a big mistake because he was injury prone, and he's another what if. So in the playoffs, they versed the Rockets with Yao Ming, Ron Artest, Shane Battier. T.C. McGrady didn't play because he got injured during the regular season. He was out for the whole year. So this was one of the defining moments of his career. He averaged 26 points in the 6-game series, 4.8 rebounds, 2.8 assists. He shot 46% and 47% from three, 87% from the free throw line. So those are good shooting splits. Game 2 was particularly memorable. He exploded 42 points and 7 rebounds, leading the Portland to victory. And then he scored in Game 4, he scored 31 points, but he kind of cost the team because he got a charging foul. Kyle Lowry drew a charging foul on him, and then they lost a close one. And in Game 5, they won with him and Aldridge, which was a promising duo. They each scored 25 points, and they had a 15-0 run in the fourth, which led them to win Game 5. But they eventually lost in Game 6 because nobody else could score outside of Aldridge and Brandon Roy. The team just couldn't score, and they were facing a good team. Like that Houston team didn't even have T.C. McGrady. If they had T.C. McGrady, I believe they would have won. They would have went farther in the playoffs, the Rockets. So in 09-10 season, Roy established himself as an All-Star again. The Portland finished 15-32, 16 in the Western Conference. Brandon Roy averaged 21, 4 and 4 on 47% shooting. He made a third-team All-NBA. Portland added veteran pieces such as Marcus Camby and Andre Miller, giving the team even more experience. But underneath the surface, this is where the knee issues came. So his knees became an issue. His health was going down. Unfortunately, we would see these injuries impact him during the playoffs. So they versed 2000 playoffs. is where his story starts to change dramatically. They face the Phoenix Suns team, led by Steve Nash, Mark Stoudemire, and Grant Hill. Roy was dealing with knee problems, and he didn't play the first 3 games of the series. So the games 2 and 3 they got blown out because Brandon Roy didn't play. Games 4 and 5, Brandon Roy played, but he came off the bench, and in Game 6 he finally played, starting. But in Game 5 he scored only 5 points off the bench. Then in Game 6 he went 4 for 16 shooting from the field. For the series, Roy averaged 9.7 points while shooting 30%. So shooting splits were bad because he only played 3 games, and because how the injuries are on him. This is a massive contrast from his 26 points per game on 47% 3-point shooting we saw against Houston in the previous playoff run. With Portland ultimately lost, and the decline in Brandon Roy's physical ability was becoming impossible to ignore. The following season was even more difficult. Roy only played 47 regular season games. He averaged 12 points, 2 assists, 3 rebounds. His field goal percentage even dropped. Shooting splits were much worse. But the important thing here isn't simply that his numbers declined, but his role and physical condition changed dramatically. So he suffered additional knee problems during the season, including problems that became significant in January 2011. Portland, they still had a strong team because they added Jared Wallace along with LaMarcus Aldridge. So they added more veterans, and they finished 48-34 to finish at 6th seed. But Randy Roy was no longer an explosive superstar who carried the offense just a couple of seasons earlier. This playoff series, they versed Dallas Mavericks to eventually win the championship in a Cinderella run, led by Dirk Nowitzki, Sean Marion, Jason Kidd, Jason Terry. So this is Roy's final playoff series, and the series started with Roy barely seeing the floor. He only played 2 minutes in Game 1 and 8 minutes in Game 2. He scored 0 points in the second game, but then something remarkable happened. In Game 3, Roy scored 16 points in 24 minutes, and Portland won. In Game 4 is defining moments, and I highlighted it in green. When he scored 18 fourth quarter points, including a 4-point play that tied the game late, and Portland came back down 23 points and won Game 4. Unfortunately, Portland couldn't win the series. Dallas won Game 5 and 6, and eventually went on to win the championship because Dirk had 33 in Game 6. Jason Terry had clutch shots in the 4th in Game 6 to ice the game. Roy, he was quiet in Game 5, and then in Game 6, even though he had 9 points, he shot good for 4 for 6. So he took less shots, I believe, due to his health. But Game 4 is important because it gave us one final glimpse of the superstar Brandon Roy could have been. So he didn't play the 0-11-0-12 season, the lockout. That was a lockout year, and he had surgery, I think, in December of that year, so he didn't play that whole year. So he basically retired, but then he came back. He tried to make a comeback, and with the Minnesota Timberwolves, who was notably, they had Kevin Love and Ricky Rubio, but his numbers are bad. He shot 31%. Yeah, you can see that I highlighted them in red. He only played 5 games, so the Timberwolves aren't even going anywhere. 31 and 51, and they were 12 seeds, so he couldn't make an impact. So we look at Brandon Roy's career as a whole. The resume is incredibly impressive considering how short it was. He won Rookie of the Year in 2007. He made a first-team All-Rookie. Became a 3-time All-Star from 2008 to 2010. He earned All-NBA second-team honors in 2009 and All-NBA third-team honors in 2010. But the biggest question isn't what he accomplished. It's about what he could have accomplished. If his knees remain healthy, is it reasonable to imagine Roy continuing as one of the best league's premier shooting guards? He could have the potential to become the second or third option on a championship team if he remained in Portland alongside LaMarcus Aldridge, and he could have developed into a Hall of Fame caliber player, in my opinion. A healthy Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge could have potentially became one 1-2 punch is one of the best duels in the Western Conference. I don't think they would have drafted Damian Lillard because Portland would have higher, better records. But we'll never know what exactly what would have happened. That's what makes Brandon Roy's career such a fascinating NBA what if. So here are the sources I used for Brandon Roy's basketball lecture, including basketballreference.com, Real GM, Hoops Hive, and other basketball resources. These sources were used to research Brandon Roy's statistics, accomplishments, team success, and career history. And that wraps it up for Brandon Roy. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next basketball lecture.